Hi everyone, thanks for coming, especially because there are lots of other talks happening at the same time, so I really appreciate that you made it to ours. Very quickly, just in case you can't recognize us, I'm Shweta, and this is Georgie. So a little intro about me. I'm a senior UX consultant, so I basically do UX, and I've been working in this industry for about 7 years. And outside of work, I also organize other meetups, so there you go.
So I'm Georgie. Unlike every other speaker on the programme, I am no digital expert at all. But hopefully you hearing about my experiences as a client will be useful today. So I work at a part of Kingston University that's externally facing. So we work with business and industry to look for collaborative projects, mainly that bring in commercial income for the university.
Cool, thanks. So a very quick intro about who we are, just so you can understand why I'm presenting this. So we are System Concepts based in London. We do UX consultancy, amongst other things. We have had lots of experience working across different platforms, doing different kinds of testing and research, rather than just usability testing. But today's talk is mainly focused on a particular approach. Separately, we do have a few of us from System Concepts here, so if you do want to talk to us about anything, feel free to grab one of us and chat. So, my colleagues here. So moving on, this is what we're planning to cover, so I thought it might be nice to talk about what I perceive a formal usability testing to be, and then we move on to why we've come up with this approach, which I've called smart usability testing. And then we will present a case study which Georgie and I worked together with Kingston University, and one of my colleagues here also worked on that project. And then we'll just explain a little bit of some implementation things and the takeaways. So hopefully you find this really useful. Okay. So a quick overview of what I think usability testing typically entails, especially focusing on the timeline. So we always have to kick off the project. This is once a project is confirmed. And then you have recruitment, and then you actually do the testing, and then the analysis and reporting. And as you can see, these are all ballpark timelines. Recruitment takes a lot of time, but also if you do very formal testing, sometimes people want, even though it's qualitative, want 10 to 15 users. And then it can take 2-3 days, and then lots of time for analysis. So that approximately is 2.5 weeks, a month or more. So it can take a lot of time. Some challenges with that I've identified is obviously it takes a lot of time, and as a result, it's hard for stakeholders to be involved because they can't give that much time. They probably aren't able to spend 3 days watching sessions. So they might only attend part of it. But more importantly, it's hard for clients who do a lot of UX, it's hard to fit in within any existing frameworks of iterative life cycles like Agile. It's hard to fit into their development cycles. So it's not very flexible. And then people just look at it as a daunting, we're spending so much money to do testing, why should we do it? So that's one of the things. And all of that makes it very expensive as well. So that's the focus of today. So we come up with this approach after lots of different client requirements. Over the years, we've decided people want things that are flexible and adaptable and cost effective so that they do it more, but also get the benefits of user testing. One of the main things is it's rapid, as the name says. So rapid testing, and it's nice to do it regularly in a more informal context, so it all happens in one day. Again, it depends on the number of users you have and the types of users you have. So if you have too many different types of users, you can't just do 1 day of user testing. What worked really well is when we do it with stakeholders attending, and we have live and collaborative note-taking with the team, because it's not just about doing user testing for the sake of it. It's about making sure the stakeholders and the team get the most of it. So if you're doing it just for 1 day, get them involved and get them to be part of the process. And that way you can do some analysis and a quick workshop on the same day, and already it's shrunk the process and hopefully makes it more cost effective as well. And just as a recap, these are the challenges it addresses, which I just talked about. Okay. So I'm just going to go through each of those steps. So rapid testing in one day, what are the main logistics around this? So what we tend to do is run 4 or 5 sessions. We ideally identify the core user group, so trying to keep it very focused. If you have very different user groups, then you need to rethink what you're trying to get out of the research or from each round of the research. And then also it's important to not try and get everything. It's very tempting sometimes to want to use that opportunity to ask about loads of different things. But the only reason rapid testing works is if your sessions are short, 45 minutes, 60 minutes. Sometimes I wouldn't go as low as 30 minutes because you do need a little bit of warm-up time with the participant. But yeah, try and be flexible with the session and try and keep it focused so it works. So you need to agree on clear research questions with your client team or the team you're working with, and make sure you address them and have like 3 to 4 core journeys that you want to test so your results are helpful. And then moving on to the main exciting bit for me is the live and collaborative note-taking. So obviously the main things here are you need clear instructions. Not everyone's familiar with working in this kind of agile fashion, so you need to explain to your team what you expect them to do, and also important things like please don't talk during the session. Focus on what the users are saying rather than discussing solutions when you're getting interesting insights. Important to note down and explain to them what they should note down. So it's all about the detail. It's about the what and the why. And we also try and do a little bit of analysis as we go along. So use color-coded post-it notes and try and say, red is or pink is issues, green is any positives. It's really helpful to note down positives as well, so people don't change things at work. And then anything like any ideas or observations, put them as a neutral color like blue. That's a nice way. And then so we tend to have 2 people, one person facilitating the sessions with the user and another person working with the clients and facilitating this collaborative note-taking. The really helpful thing is rather than reaching the end of the day and having a pile of a messy post-it thing, is to tidy it along the way and use screenshots of the actual design so you can make sense of where these post-its are going rather than just a mess. So that's really helpful. And if they're duplicates, you can decide whether you stack them or whether you discard them as long as you've got one meaningful post-it note. Okay? And then comes the exciting bit. So you've done your note-taking, everyone's been involved. So at the end of the day, you have like 1 hour. You've only done 4 or 5 sessions, so it should all be quite fresh in the mind, and you can have the facilitator in the room as well. And everyone can just go through the post-it notes and think about what came up, is this important, how does this meet the client's priorities and things like that. So it's a nice way to go through everything, make sure everyone understands, and also for me as a researcher to make sure I understand what the priorities are for the team, so I can give useful recommendations and priorities according to that. One of the things that we'll talk about in our case study, sometimes it is useful to put a report of this, depending on who you're working with. Sometimes it's nice to just be agile if they're planning to come back 2 weeks later to do another iterative round. But if they're not doing that, then it's nice to just document the changes. But it doesn't take that much time once you've discussed everything, so it's not like 5 days of analysis and reporting. So, as a summary then, if you remember the previous timeline I showed you, so this one with smart usability testing, it's like 1.5 weeks roughly. I mean, you can reduce the recruitment time, usually about 10 days lead time. But if it's just 4 or 5 users, and if you're working with a regular recruitment company, they can speed up that process because they're familiar with who you're recruiting. And 1 day, and you're already doing analysis and workshop on the same day, so your clients could technically go away with already a good idea of what's happened, and hopefully a report, if you do give one, is not coming a week later, but at least 2 days afterwards. So that's basically, and that's like already just 2 weeks. So saves money, but saves time as well, and involves everyone. So now we'll talk about our case study, which Georgie is going to start with.
Okay, so Me and my team, just me and one other person, Nicole, we look after 2 websites within the main university corporate website. So one's Services for Business, and the other one is short courses. So Services for Business, as you will hopefully, is the main target audience is businesses. Short courses is a bit more complicated because we have professional courses for businesses, both bespoke courses and open courses that you can join on. We have courses for students, international summer schools, and we also have kind of general interest evening type classes for the local community. And just to put this into context, I think at the time we did this research, it was last summer, I think Services for Business was about 0.2% of the overall website traffic, and short courses something like 0.9%. So obviously for the web team running the central website, we were low priority, way down the list. So we first started thinking about doing some user testing when we were looking at rewriting the content on our websites. This was mainly Services for Business because the short courses website was actually quite new. We mainly wanted to get a better insight into what our target audiences were looking for in terms of Services for Business. I don't know whether many of you are familiar with business centres or departments within universities, but most people didn't know that universities such as Kingston could offer them services or business support. So actually the user testing was part of a larger project where we also did an SEO audit and a competitor benchmarking audit, which we actually did internally in the end. Another reason why we were interested in doing this research was it gave us valid evidence for us to be able to put together a case to sell making changes to the website internally, both to our management team within our department and also to the central web team. Sorry, I should have pointed out that I'm the content owner of the website, but our central web team does all the publishing, which means that unfortunately I don't really have much say in sort of the structure, navigation, the look and feel of the website at this particular point. And lastly, going back to time frames, we actually had quite a short time frame to do this. I think we probably got in touch with you maybe about this time last year, and our financial year ends in July, so we needed to get the whole project done and dusted and signed off and invoiced by the end of July. So the approach.
It's all on this slide.
That one.
Yeah.
So I think we first got in contact. Should I start with some of our concerns when we first thought about doing this project? Well, firstly was budget. I have quite a small marketing budget because I work in universities, public money, and we had no idea how much this might cost. So initially we thought, could we do this ourselves? We have some user testing labs at the university and a few academics and students who sort of work in this area. But then actually one of our academics recommended Systems Concepts because he actually taught Shweta on a was it Masters in user
interaction design,
many years ago. And so we spoke to Systems Concept and realised that we really couldn't do this ourselves. There were so many advantages in going with an expert agency. So we met and you put together a brief, and we really liked the sound of it, particularly having done everything done in one day and the fact that we could be part of the process as well. Another concern we had was because we had to work through the central web team, how this would go down with them. Would they be offended that we were going outside to essentially change parts of the website? And also, would we be able to implement all these changes? So we involved the web team right from the beginning. In fact, the web manager came to the sessions with us. So she was part of the process. And yeah, do you want to explain some more about it?
So just to add a little bit, so as a consultant, we get involved quite early on sometimes with teams. We sometimes get the luxury of just being asked an inquiry. In Georgie's case, we were just having a casual chat and some emails, and I was trying to understand, how I can help them, because obviously their team hadn't done UX before and weren't sure of what should be done and how much it would cost in this case. And I think even if you don't work as a consultant, you might be approached as an expert in-house. So it's quite useful to have those kind of conversations and understand, either you're coming up with a budget cost-effective UX plan that can be repeated, or you're just helping one team for a one-off situation. What I understood, which is why I suggested this approach, is that even though they hadn't done UX and aren't, as you said, a digital expert, I don't necessarily agree with that, but you were excited. They were keen to do this, and they were keen to bring it into their company culture. And so I suggested the collaborative live note-taking process. That's quite an important thing, and also it's quite important for both parties to be willing to kind of share that knowledge. If you're not able to kind of facilitate that session, it can be hard. It can go really messy and not really productive. So that was the key thing. And then the rest kind of just happened from there. We tried to understand, okay, is it cost, is it timeline, what is more important? And because they were academia, I thought they would really appreciate a report as well, because I know there was some time after you got the results that you could actually sell it internally and push the changes.
Yeah. I just want to point out something else, going back to one of your points earlier about objectives. Another concern we had was that if we were, I think we scheduled to view 5 participants, but actually one didn't turn up, so there was 4. So we thought, if we're only seeing 4 or 5 people, would we get enough insight to be able to make effective recommendations? But actually, already we could see patterns in what the participants were saying, so that was absolutely fine.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, was working together and identifying who the target audience is, because it, as you said, like not everyone would necessarily remember or think of a university website to come and get professional development courses as an industry. So we were looking for people who are just looking for those kind of courses, and kept it quite broad so we could still get useful insights on the content rather than actual user. And yeah, it was quite interesting, which is the next slide, isn't it? The outcome.
So shall I just move?
Oh, yeah.
So these are just some. This is our landing page for Services for Business. So yeah, it's a bit difficult without showing you a before and after, but just to point out a few key things. So the boxes in the middle there, previously in line with the rest of the website design. Underneath each title there was sort of 2 or 3 sentences about what that section's content was, and so we scrapped all that because it just looked messy, too much information. Busy business people just wanted to see what they wanted, click in, and contact us, basically. So we had clear links to other sites, because some of the content here links to other sites, and that wasn't, for example, the short courses site, and that wasn't really clear before. Some of the language and terminology we'd used before, quite internally facing, some of them. There was some sort of complex, jargony type stuff, especially when cause we work quite closely with research terminology. One of the key products we sell, as it were, called Knowledge Transfer Partnerships, and that was on the front page.
Is it called KTP?
KTP, yeah. So that's all gone. That's now within consultancy and research. Even things such as our case studies were called success stories. I think pretty much everybody brought that up as, why aren't they just called case studies? So that's changed. Long discussion around contact us. I think all the participants said, we just want a phone number, we just want an email, we just want to be able to talk to someone. And when we, a few years ago, we had this discussion before and thought we want contact forms so we'd be able to get people's details, but since the testing we've now gone back to having email and telephone number available. Yes, some key information made more visible and upfront. Our expertise was hidden away in the About Us section. And we kind of knew I think the advantage of doing this testing is we did know a lot of this stuff, but it was just evidence to make us actually do something about it. And some of it is still in progress. Our events and news, we have to sort that out at the moment. And there's some other functionality that we're looking at, like getting a blog developed. But yeah, that's still to come. But yeah, so it's all still in progress. Yeah,
you've got some quick wins there, which is really useful.
Yes. Yeah.
I think one thing to add, which you're going to talk about in a bit, is the challenge with these kind of academic or big company, so it's not just the services for business website, it's the whole parent site that it sits under. You're restricted by templates and things like that. And often like UX and testing could just be seen as, oh, it's a barrier, we might have to change things, we may not be able to change things. But the process was so quick, and we were able to get some really quick wins around terminologies and labeling and just, making sense of what's on the landing page and communicating things better. So I think it was still quite useful.
Oh no, definitely. Yes, some of the challenges, as Shweta mentioned. So we involved the web manager all the way along. We put together our recommendations, met again with the web team, yes, all fine, wanted to launch everything in September. Then all of a sudden they had other priorities over the summer. Our web editor left, was replaced with someone else, our management within the team changed, then we were told, there's too much development work required, we can't do that within the time frame. So to overcome this, we got together and negotiated some quick wins, as Shweta was talking about. So the changes that you see now are not everything we wanted to do, but we're sort of part of the way there. And obviously this will hopefully be an ongoing process, because nothing ever stands still. And now we are definitely internal ambassadors for user experience across the organisation. And we've been talking about it to lots of other colleagues, and everyone's now getting much more sort of aware of the fact that this is something that they need to do. And it's just always putting the user at the forefront of our minds now whenever we do anything, whenever we put up new content, particularly with our short courses, for example, which has a long customer journey which involves booking and payments, etc. Just always thinking of the user, and just small things like testing things internally, just getting another colleague to go through the process before we actually publish.
Sounds like we got really lucky working with you guys. So it does sound like a very positive narrative, but the only thing is you need to have that initial discussion, and you need to see what works with the team. But there are ways to make research really quick and dirty, if I may say so, and not have to bog down people in massive reports that they might just put in a drawer and never come back to again, and make it more interactive. And the whole idea is you want to get people to do this kind of stuff again and understand their users. So I think we got really lucky to work with you guys, and that you understand this now. Some quick takeaways. So the main thing with any kind of research is the minute you should reduce the amount of fieldwork time, if it makes sense, it already reduces the time and the time for analysis as well, and recruitment. So that's really helpful. And sometimes this wouldn't work. So in your case, it was a low priority. It's not the main Kingston website. But sometimes you might want to iterate it because you may not get enough, or you might want to make some quick changes and do another round. So really need to see what works for you. This is the most crucial point. Involve stakeholders, because that's when they get the most of it, and I'm really glad that you were able to involve someone from the web team as well, because that's when the decisions get made. The quick turnaround of insights. So in our case, we use post-it notes, but if it makes sense, just have your stakeholders and ask them to watch the sessions. If they can't be available, maybe try and remote stream the sessions. So there are different ways of getting them involved, so you don't have to make them all do the hard work of note-taking if they don't want to.
So this was me, I think. Yeah. It was really good for myself and my colleague, because we work across the whole marketing portfolio, and digital is just one aspect of it. So it was really nice to be able to just spend time focusing on the digital aspects of what we have to do day to day.
Was there anything? Oh, yeah. The thing for me as well, as a consultant, we don't always get that insight of how findings are going to help client teams, or what we're getting out of the user testing, is that actually helpful? So having that kind of discussion just naturally emerging from watching sessions is really useful, because then you're like, okay, this is what they're thinking of, or these are the constraints, so how can I make an actionable recommendation for them around this thing? So yeah, I thought that was really helpful, and I kind of felt part of that team, and we who were working on it felt like that. I think that was everything. Do you guys have any questions?
I think it was just on time, wasn't it?
Thank you so much. Well, we have time for questions. It's fantastic. Who would like to go first?
Yeah?
I was wondering, did you have individual user testings and the rest was watching, or was everybody together in one room?
Oh, we had a separate viewing room. So we have a lab and an adjacent viewing room, and we have a TV link up. We prefer it that way because then only the facilitator is with the participant, so they're not feeling conscious. We do tell the participant that we have other colleagues watching the session just so they can take notes. So, we're not lying to them, but then people can just take notes and stuff without interrupting the user session.
And the nice thing was actually when Lizzie had finished doing the official questions, that she came back into
The room,
with us,
yeah.
and we could ask further questions, so the kind of live questions, and then she went back and asked did some
Yeah.
further probing, so that was really good.
Any other questions?
In terms of reporting your findings to the team or whoever you have to report to, how do you do it? Do you do it in a form of a presentation, or have you come up with any other ways of telling the story in a way that is compelling and that is going to get people to actually listen to it?
Yeah, so that is one way in this approach was the workshop at the end of the day of testing. So it was very informal. It was 3 of you guys from the client team, and Lizzie, my colleague, and myself. We had all the post-it notes with annotated printouts of the actual UI. So we just went through it together, and then we had a flipboard on the side, and we just, as we agreed, we wrote down the key priorities, like I think top 10 takeaways according to the team. We obviously had all the detail as well on the post-its, and we kind of arranged them. So that was the actual face-to-face presentation, which was hopefully engaging. And then after that, we did a PowerPoint report just to make sure, we added some of our recommendations as well and documented it. We used PowerPoint mainly because it can double up as a presentation if the client team wanted to use it internally, but also we can have visuals of the actual UI and kind of annotate it, so it's not a dry report. But we tried to not make it very big because it was only 4 participants, so we didn't want to make it sound much bigger than it was. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
So when you do usability testing, is it on specifics, or do you start on usability objectives and then get to the specifics? Is it all part of the one workshop, or is that 2 separate things?
Do you mean for the actual research session with the participant or with the client?
Or do you just, well, that's what I was going to ask also, is it only the client who sets the usability objectives, or do you involve the users in that as well?
The usability objectives are set with the client team and the research expert. So the idea is we want to understand. So in your case, Georgie knew that there were not many visitors, so they wanted to understand what they could do. So that's why they were doing the competitive benchmarking and SEO analysis simultaneously. But also, they had these key user journeys. One was finding and booking a course. So that itself was like, okay, are people finding the information when they're on this page? That was one journey. And how do they go about from the landing page to an internal course page? So they don't have to be... they don't have to be like really, scientific objectives. They're more from the perspective of the user. Are people able to do what they would normally want to do on a website like this? And once on that website, are they able to find the information that the team are trying to communicate to them?
So you already knew the navigation was an issue. You didn't know to test the navigation, was it?
Well, you want to answer that?
No, as I mentioned before, we did have suspicions that several things were not as probably clear as they should be. So yeah, the user testing was just a way to kind of have evidence for this and to sort of make a change happen. So, for example, the whole Short Courses website we think is too buried away within the main website, so this gave us evidence to say it should be more upfront, and although we're still not on the homepage, at some point maybe, hopefully we will be.
One of the things is, even though you might have a hypothesis, as we call it, that something's wrong, you don't know what people are actually doing. And sometimes usability testing answers that. It's like, how are people going from the homepage of the main Kingston University website, where actually everything promoted there is master's courses, postgraduate courses, that kind of stuff. How are business users going to the Services for Business link from there, but also within the page of Services for Business or short courses, how are they finding these mix of, professional development versus an internship for a student, and that kind of stuff. It's very interesting, and some people might just go to search, and are they able to even find the search versus, using the navigation. So we did learn some useful things. The thing about the users defining their objectives, they may not define them as such, but during the session, they might say some interesting things or show some interesting behaviors, and then you might follow up about why they did something a certain way, which is why, like Lizzie, who did the sessions, was quite good at following up naturally, but also came in to the room and asked the clients, because sometimes they know about their website a lot more. So she asked us if there were other questions we wanted to follow up on. So they kind of helped, but not really defining, more about telling us how they behaved on the website.
Time for our final question.
Yeah?
Yes, I was just wondering, you said you also invited somebody from the doc team. Was it, do you think it was dangerous that then the discussion would be too much about technical issues and...
No, because I think our web managers comes from more of a content background. I think if we brought the developer, then yes, there would be issues. But no, it was fine. And then obviously it helped because she manages the rest of the team. When we went back, she'd been part of the process, and so it was just really useful for her to be there.
Normally, though, to answer your question, if possible, I do encourage product, marketing, UX, developers, everyone who is involved with the team, with designing that product and making the decisions, to be involved, because it's nice for a developer to not be told that change this, as opposed to actually see why we're asking them to change this. And the key thing then is to make sure, again, as I mentioned earlier on, is at the start of the day when they're watching, say, please focus on watching the sessions, and we have 15-minute breaks between. You can discuss whatever you want at that time. So during the session, they're watching the session and letting others watch the session. And if they want to ask something really interesting about a design or technical change, they make a note of it. And so you need to have a good facilitator who can shush people if you do have difficult people in the room who like to talk. But these guys weren't like that.
There were lots of nice snacks.
Yeah, it's nice to have something, coffee, refreshments, and some treats to get people to feel like it's not just work, but it's interesting work. It's the little things that we don't actually think about usually. I think that was everything. Do we have more time?
I think we should wrap it up
Yeah.
now, so we have time to
Yes.
things and settle. I love it. Thank you so much. We don't often have time to, the opportunity to see client or collaboration between the client and the consultant. Things like that. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I'm sure you all appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.